I say, how are you doing today? How are you doing today? I am your host, Lacey G. Souldier Turner, and today I have a special guest with me. She was once a campaign organizer, a recruiter for the Census Bureau. She was a substitute teacher. She got two sons, 40 years of broadcasting. She did 28 years at KMOX, been married for 28 years, got award-winning columnist, many accolades and accomplishments, gifted motivational speaker. We got the wonderful, talented, amazing Carol Daniel. Welcome to the platform.
Thank you. What a beautiful introduction. You just read that so beautifully.
You know, I got to make sure you're great because you're a great person. So Mrs. Carol Daniel, my first question to you, where were you born and raised, and how was your upbringing as a child?
I was born in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. My father was a drill sergeant in the Army, and Fort Leonard Wood is in south central Missouri. And so I grew up on an Army base. And in 1962, and I say that year for a reason, because shortly after I was born, my father, we went to Germany once, and I had three older brothers at the time, and we came back 2 years later. I don't remember it because I was like 18 months old when we went. And when we came back, now it's the mid-60s, and the Vietnam War breaks out. And so my father went to Vietnam twice, as many people did. And so we did not travel, of course, and we stayed in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And the crazy part about that, at the time, the military doesn't do this anymore, but at the time, if your spouse who was serving was deployed, you could no longer live on the base. Wow. You had to move off base. Now they don't move families. And so back in the day, in the 60s, in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, there were no apartment buildings. There were no houses for rent. There were lots of trailer courts.
That's crazy.
And so we moved into a trailer, and I do have memories of the trailer in the wind rocking. I have memories of that. But it was a wonderful upbringing. I was just talking to my oldest brother about, it felt like you grew up on one large picnic ground because it was always clean, and the trash was picked up, and it was always green and lush, and we walked everywhere. And I think most kids did in the late 60s, early 70s. We all walked all over your neighborhood. You leave the house in the morning. Your mom and dad didn't know where you were. Going out to play.
You say this was before Amber Alerts, huh? No.
Before Amber Alerts and cell phones and all of that. But everybody knew, on the military base, we all knew that everybody was in the Army. Most people were in the Army there. And so I was very active. I mean, I was a cheerleader for many years, and I ran track, and I was in student government, and I went to summer camp, and it was a wonderful childhood. Even though my father was gone a great deal, but my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and I just have these memories of coming home from school and walking in the house and the smell. She was such a good cook.
Yeah.
Just the smell of whatever she was making, unless it was lima beans, my friend.
You ain't like no lima beans.
Oh, I hate lima beans to this day.
Yeah.
But I have 3 older brothers and 1 younger sister, so we were, a team. That was enough people to have a good time. But there were lots and lots and lots of children, lots of things to do. It was just a wonderful. I look back on it now. I mean, at the time, you're thinking, you see TV, and we didn't have cable, but you see the way other people are living. I'd never been to the ocean. I hadn't really traveled internationally. I didn't have those experiences, but it was still a wonderful way to grow up, and my mother made it fun, and my brothers were very protective, and I had lots of good friends, and yeah, so it was great.
Okay. So before this illustrious career of yours that you had, what made you want to get into broadcasting, period?
That's a good question, because I went to college as a business major. My plan was only a visual one. All I could see was great suits. And for whatever reason, an eel-skin briefcase, because every woman, every man who was in business had a briefcase, and mine was going to be eel-skin. And I just saw myself in a big city walking into a tall building, running something, doing something. I didn't know the industry. I didn't know anything, but I just wanted to be a woman in business. So, but then I flunked out of Mizzou, and I transferred to Lincoln University.
Hold on, wait a minute. How you flunk out? You was partying and just being bad.
Yeah, I appreciate your professionalism in stopping me. Look, you got to explain that.
Exactly. You can't fly past that.
You just can't keep talking now. So two things. I was doing some partying, but that really wasn't it. It actually was very hard. I don't know that I was prepared. Teachers, professors were not very helpful. Mm-hmm. Plus, the thing I learned later is that it seemed that the counselors, the admission, not admissions, but guidance counselors, if you will, on the college level, they're not called that, they would give you the hardest classes up front. Mm. So there's really no reason that a freshman would take statistics. Mm. I think that's your either second semester or second year class. And so it was a combination of taking classes that were out of order and taking classes I just wasn't prepared. College math, they call it college math, but students to go into the Bachelor of Science arena in high school should go beyond regular math and take the harder, higher level math classes to prepare you for college. Even though my 23-year-old son says, why would a journalist need trigonometry or, things like that? And he's an actor. Why would I need trigonometry? So it was a combination of those things. And then I will say, and this is in my book, that I started dating someone who was abusive, and I stopped going to class. And so that last semester, I don't think I probably stopped going to class a month before the semester was over, a month and a half or so. And I just sort of disappeared from campus, and which I would say to universities now, big ones, it's hard to keep track of everybody, but you have to do a better job of keeping track of everybody because that's your responsibility in a way. And so classes were too hard. I wasn't prepared. I was in the wrong major. I was absolutely in the wrong major. And then I had this bad relationship that just capped off a series of mistakes and misjudgments. I misjudged my own gifts and my own talent. And I misjudged. I also went to the wrong. I should never have gone to Mizzou. It was too large. And because of my preparation level and because of their inability to be there, really, they're better now, but back then in the 80s, early 80s, to be there for their students, all of those things were a failure. Yeah.
Okay.
So then I go to Lincoln, and I do decide by this time that I want to be a journalist. I want to be on the radio. I want to be a talk show host. I want to be a reporter, all of those things. And so I got to Lincoln, and I worked at the student newspaper. I had actual jobs. I worked on the campus radio station. I had internships at a TV station. Everything they offered me, I took advantage of. Every resource. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that. I was the same way when I was at Webster University. I'm a film writer and director, so when I went there, I took advantage of all the film equipment and like I got work study and everything in there. So I understand exactly what you mean.
Yes.
So I saw you began your career at the Voice of St. Louis in 1995 as an anchor, reporter, and a talk show host. So how did you get that, I guess, job, and what was that experience like?
So I was working after I was working in the Fort Leonard Wood, Waynesville area doing talk radio, and I got a job in Cape Girardeau, and I was on the air in Cape Girardeau. I was a news anchor there and a reporter, and the program director at KMOX was driving down Interstate 55 with his family, he said, and he would listen to radio, whatever town he was in. He would listen to the local radio, because that's how you find, that's often, he said, how you find talent. And he heard me doing a newscast. I want to say, I've never been asked this, but I think it was a 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon newscast. And he called the newsroom, and I happened to answer the phone. I finished the newscast, like a 2-minute newscast, and which for me it also means look at God, because that's just 2 minutes, and he happened to catch me. And if he hadn't been listening, he may not have heard me at all, and this opportunity doesn't come my way. And so he called, and I answered, and he told me his name, who he was, his title, where he worked, and he said, "We have a job at KMOX, would you like to apply?" And I said, yes. And so the people in the newsroom with me, all they heard me say was, yes, no, of course, thank you, I'll do that, thank you very much, goodbye. That's all they heard me say on my end, because I couldn't say anything, because this is a job, and
Exactly.
so it becomes a private thing, right? And so he asked me to send him writing samples and a resume and a picture, and this is radio, and a picture, and I had none of those things. I had been at KZIM in Cape Girardeau for 3.5 years and was enjoying it. When I got there, they said, "We want you to take this show to #1 in 3 years," and I did it in a year. And I loved the small community, was really enjoying my time there. By this time, I had met my husband. I had just gotten married, and probably, this call was like April 1st or 2nd or something like that, and I hadn't been married a year. And so I had been looking to move. We had been talking about moving and going someplace else, bigger market, making more money, but I hadn't done anything yet. And so I did have to go to I can't remember where I went to get a passport photo. That's because I didn't have any right now. Everybody has a bio photo, and everybody has 10,000 photos, of course, even on your phone.
Yes.
So I had to go somewhere, get a passport photo, and I created this resume, and I printed off writing samples, and I had to overnight them to him. Another thing I had never done. These things are so common now. It's so funny.
Exactly.
Yeah, 28 years ago, nobody was doing this, and so I mailed all these things to him. Now here's the backstory. Someone else was working in the newsroom also, and she had applied to the job at KMOX, and was saying to everyone in the newsroom, "I'm getting this job. I'm out of here. Say goodbye to me." And I went home one night and I told my husband, I was just in tears, that I know I'm better than she is, and she's going to get this job. And this is before he called me. She's going to get this job, and I just can't believe it. And he said, "Well, why don't you apply?" And I said, "I don't know how." I don't know how. I don't know what to do. And like a week later, he called me.
That is great. That's God.
Like a week later, he called me. And then we drove to St. Louis for me to do a live on-air test run. So it wasn't a recorded thing. It was live on the air on a Saturday morning, and I was on the air for I think 2 hours, or maybe an hour. For an hour, we stayed at the old Adams Mark, downtown St. Louis, and I walked across the street at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and got into the studio and sat down with this man I'd never met before, and co-anchored an hour with him.
Wow.
And it was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. And I just, took a deep breath, and Lord knows I love to read, and reading out loud is a different thing, but I've always loved to read, and I'm curious anyway, and so I just thought, well, Lord, you brought me this far, and we'll see how it goes. Mm-hmm. And then I sat with him for an hour, and he offered the job, and we moved in 2 weeks. From the time he called me to the time we moved here was 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. It's still crazy to me today.
Was it hard finding a house or a place to live?
Well, here's how much the world has changed, how much company culture has changed. At the time, KMOX was owned by CBS, and was owned by CBS for nearly all of its existence, up until about 5 years ago. And at the time, they paid for us to live in an apartment downtown. They paid the first 32 months or something like that. Mm. And so that's how we were able to find a space, because they said, we'll move you. And so we stayed downtown for a year. Yeah, so it wasn't. And then when we were looking for a house, my sister-in-law was a retired teacher now, but she was a teacher, and she said to me, "You want to find a good school district." And so we looked at a variety of places that had good school districts, and so that's how we wound up moving where we did. And we were able to, interest rates were about 9-10% 28 years ago. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Carl. How was your 28 years at KMOX? Like, did you enjoy it?
It's been wonderful. It's been difficult. There have been very difficult moments. Covering tragedy live on the air is heartbreaking, and talking about yourself as you do as a talk show host, you have to get so personal, but not everything, but you have to be vulnerable, mm-hmm. and have to be transparent, and everybody's a human being, so everybody doesn't get along all the time, and I'm a strong-willed woman, and that doesn't always sit well with everybody. But I'm also a compassionate person and a helpful person, and so I have tried to be that for other people, especially younger people and part-time people in the newsroom. I've tried to be. I'm one of those people that everybody comes to, um, for advice and a shoulder, and so I've always been grateful for that. That God has given me that spirit that people are willing to lean on and lean into. But yeah, there have been some arguments, about stories and about the issues of the day, and some of those arguments are live on the air, because that's what talk radio is, right?
Yes, definitely.
So I remember telling somebody one time, they're talk show hosts in the newsroom, and those are two different things. People who do news are supposed to report the facts,
exactly.
Period.
Facts.
And people who do talk shows are all about opinion.
Facts.
So we are two separate entities, and talk show hosts are not news anchors. And I know people are confused by that, because today people get their news from talk show hosts. They get their news from Fox and MSNBC, the talking heads.
Yes.
And those people are not news anchors. So they're not paid to tell you the truth of it. They're paid to tell you their opinion. That they shade it.
Try to sway you one way.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember saying to somebody, this is not on the air but off the air, that we are not here for you. The newsroom is not here for you. So I just wanted him to treat the newsroom with more respect than he was at the time. So I told him we are not here for you. We are totally separate in what we do. So yeah, I'm very open.
I got you. So I saw you help launch the Emmy, winning television talk show, Great Day St. Louis, and you was the co-host for a couple years. So what was the thought process in creating it, and what was your experience like on Great Day St. Louis?
So it's interesting because I do. It is an Emmy award-winning show, and when people enter things for Emmys, if you see a 1-hour show and you'll see 5 different stories in the show, the person who did one of those stories got an Emmy, right? So that makes it an Emmy-winning show. But that doesn't mean that I, Carol Daniel, won the Emmy. But I did take the coworker's Emmy, and I took a picture with it.
Hey, look, I helped you. Y'all finna take my
I did hold his Emmy, and I took a picture with it. I certainly did. And I will tell everybody that I was the one of 2 people who helped launch this Emmy award-winning show, because it is an Emmy award-winning show. But I had always wanted to be a talk show host, and I always wanted to be a television talk show host. I grew up watching Phil Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael, who started here in St. Louis. Sally Jesse Raphael used to wear red glasses every day. There were not, Oprah didn't exist then. All these shows today, I was growing up just watching those 2. I never thought that I had the look, because even though I was a 10 or 12, size 10 or 12, but in television it's different now. But again, we're talking about the 70s and 80s and 90s even. A lot of women are like almost 2 or 4. It was just super tiny, super tiny, and I was not that. And so I did not think that I could be a television anchor reporter, and there weren't as many Black women then as there is now. And so when this opportunity came about, I jumped at it. And actually a former coworker called me and said, I just saw a job opening. It has your name written all over it. You need to apply. And at the time, KMOX was in the same building as KMOV, Channel 4. And so I called a friend. I didn't have a video. They needed a video resume. I called a friend. He helped me create a tape. And I gave it to the general manager. and he called me into his office for I guess it was an interview, and I got that job, and so I worked part-time on Channel 4 on Great Day St. Louis to launch that show, and then I continued to work full-time at KMOX. So I was doing both television and radio at the same time for 4 years, and I promise you, I don't know that I would ever do that. I guess I would do it again if I had the opportunity, but my Lord, it was so hard. It was so hard. Wow.
Say, looking back at it, it was super hard. So
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it because, I mean, yeah, it was. I met so many great people, and I got to interview, and I have this picture. I got to interview President Jimmy Carter.
Wow.
And Chuck Berry together.
Wow. That's history.
It was their decision
to
sit together.
Wow.
It is a historic, crazy combination. What do they have in common?
Exactly.
So, yes, I got to interview a lot of.
Okay. So, look, Ms. Kerr, I see in 2013, you published your first book, All I Ever Wanted, Relationships, Marriage, Family. So what was your thought process when you was creating it, and how did you feel about it? Let the people know what that's about.
It is an autobiographical book. It's about my life becoming, growing up, and the title emanates from me as a 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 9, that's my earliest memory of wanting to be a mother and a wife. And that was all that I ever wanted, was to be a mother and a wife. I didn't have these grand dreams of, I did not grow up wanting to be a reporter or a news anchor or an author or columnist. All I ever wanted to be was a mother and a wife. And that dream started as a 9-year-old. And I don't know, just seeing my mother, having brothers, having close-knit family, and it just being innate, you know. I just always wanted to have children and to be a wife. And that's where the book title comes from. And it is about my journey to that and how difficult it was, and the stories of, you know, being homeless for several months, and the bad relationship I told you about earlier, and flunking out of college, and the way that my mother reacted after I didn't have a phone then, and I got evicted and moved in with friends, my friends' parents, and eventually called my mother, and she said to me, just come home. And I was living in Kansas City at the time. And so the book follows that journey, you know, to meeting my husband and then having kids, and it's about my life, and it ends at a point where I'm, you know, do achieve those things. I do become a mother and a wife, and what it's like to mother these 2 boys, and realizing with the first child that it was a son, and my second thought was, I'm giving birth to a Black man. That was my thought, and thinking about what his life would be like and how to raise him, and, you know, to be strong and protected. And so I had all those thoughts, you know, shortly after I found out that I was having a boy. So my sister-in-law describes it. She said she stayed home one day, and she was home one day and read it the entire day. She spent the whole day reading it. It's easy to read. But I wanted to write it because I know that we look at one another and we think, based on how we look or what we have, job, car, looks, whatever, and we think that we think of what a person has, and we assign never really know the journey.
Facts.
And we tend to be, and maybe it's not, sometimes there is jealousy, but we tend to envy people who have what we think have it all, and we don't know the journey.
Facts.
And so, I would say to my sons, you know, all this stuff you see now, this house, this big house, these cars, you know, being able to go out to eat when we want, that's now.
Fact, yeah, they don't know about the journey.
You were in the backseat when we were, exactly, when we were digging through the car for change, you know, in the drive-through of Captain D's or Long John Silver or whatever it was, you know, how much do you have? And I'm trying to find enough change to buy a meal. I was telling them, you see it now. You don't know what it was like when we first had you. And so I wrote the book to tell people there's a journey, and this is my story of how I got to be here, because people have often said to me that I am inspiring, and it is my intention and my responsibility to be motivating, to be not only inspirational, but aspirational. So I can inspire you and you can be moved by what I say, but I want to leave you so that you aspire to then do better, be better, get to from A to B to C to D. I want you to I want to be aspirational. You know, I want people to look at me and understand this journey and think I am not only, I love what you did, Carol, but I want to do it. You know, whatever it is, I want to have whatever I wanted, you know. So that's why I wrote the book, because I realized that people will see KMOX and hear me on the air and not know what it took to get there and to stay there. So to maintain all these years. So that's really why I wrote it.
Okay. Man, y'all see that, man? Curl is dropping jewels on us. The journey is all about the journey. It's the truth. So look, Curl.
It's the truth.
Speaking of your journey, you know, you done got many accomplishments, many honors. I want to talk about 3 of them, though. So last year, the St. Louis Media History Foundation inducted you into the Media Hall of Fame. So how did you feel about that great accomplishment?
I felt like, am I that old now? Have I reached a point where Hall of Fame stuff is happening? You've been around a long time, and I will say this is breaking news for you too, because just, what is today, Thursday? Whenever this airs, Tuesday, 2 days prior to us doing this interview, I found out that I am going to be inducted into the Lincoln University Hall of Fame.
Look at that breaking news.
I just found that out, and so it's humbling, and I just think about all the moments that I struggled and that I did not think I could do it, and I did not think that, like, they would let me. Like, I thought, you know, people are against you, and there are, you know, people work with difficult people. Everybody has that experience. And I just think about all those times when I would drag home or drag to work or wake up, and the feeling that you have is one of nervousness and anxiousness. You know, I just would think of all those times I didn't have pure joy about it. And so the struggle, as we like, the struggle is real, but the struggle is also worth it, right? The struggle is worth it.
Yes.
As long as you got something in mind and you got someplace you want to go. And I know somebody said to me once, you belong there. And I had to think about that too. To get from how did I get here to people assuming I don't deserve to be here, excuse me, to getting to the point where I believe that I deserve to be here, and then to the point where I am good at what I do. I am talented. And so I thought about all those things, you know, wow, I'm old, and my goodness, I've gone through a lot to get to this point. And to look out in that audience that evening and see my husband and both of my sons, well, my one son, because the other son was in had moved to Chicago, but to see my son there, my youngest son, he was born in the midst of this career, and this is all he's ever known. He has seen me on stage at the Fox Theater. He has seen me on stage at St. Louis Symphony. He has seen me on stage. He has seen me on many stages. He has seen me at many microphones, and I wanted him to know what I did, and I wanted him to be able to handle himself in a crowd and with strangers and with adults, and hear interesting conversations and know that there's life beyond the Game Boy and the laptop, and there's life out here. Exactly. And so I just was it was such a humbling experience, and also edifying. It was motivating, and it gave me extra energy, to go to make some more moves. That this journey isn't over, and everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to know that they matter, and we should matter to the people closest to us. We should matter to the ones that we say I love you to. You should know as a child that you matter to your mom and dad, and a wife should know she matters to her husband. Employees should know that they matter, to the boss. And in my job, I want, and I believe, and I know this to be true, that what I do matters to the larger community. And it matters, if 40 is shut down or 70 has a wrong way crash, well, that matters, right, to people that are driving. But, when there's a pandemic and we're trying to give you the information that we think you need as best we can, that matters. And I'm one of those people, when a crisis happens, I stay calm. I just stay calm, because I feel like you have to be able to think straight. So people have said to me, they appreciate the calm delivery. I don't, even as a talk show host, I'm not an angry person. I can get angry, and I have been angry, but I'm not one of those people that's yelling, and I've cried on the air, and so it made me feel a lot of things. Humble was definitely one of them, but it was motivating for me, and it helped me to see that my career has been a career of substance, and I have touched people, and to God be the glory for all of that.
So I also see, speaking on that too, this goes to the next accomplishment. In 2021, the Greater St. Louis Association of Black Journalists named you the Living Legend. So what does the name Living Legend mean to you?
Again, am I that old? Well, I mean, living legend means that there are enough people that I respect who respect me, and this is an honor, just like the history, media history, and that Hall of Fame. Those are from industry professionals. It's not a popularity contest. You have to have X number of years in the business, but from GSLABJ, it's from people, from your own. And these are people that I've worked with, in the vineyard, if you will, for almost 3 decades. The majority, those on that committee who voted, we've known each other definitely over 20 years. And so for people to have watched the because do we not tell our kids, you don't know people are watching, but they're watching. Somebody is always watching, right?
Yeah,
and
correct.
You should always act like that, right?
Facts.
And just let that be your character, so you don't even have to think about it. If it's your character, you never have to think about it, right? Because that's just your DNA.
Correct.
So it just tells me that they've been watching, and what they have seen over two decades was enough that they would give me this great honor. And my husband, I never really thought about this when we got married. I wasn't thinking about legacy. When he says he always thought about legacy. And it was why he wanted to be in business for himself. He wanted to leave a legacy. And so because of him, I thought I have been thinking legacy more than ever before in our marriage. He's the one who brought that to my mind. And so I have a legacy as a mother, and I have a legacy as a wife. And so it was only natural that my career would be one based in legacy. And my son told me one time, he was talking to someone else about me, and I'm standing right there, and he said, yeah, I've seen people fall in her arms and cry in the store. And he said it like it happens all the time.
This is nothing. This is just another.
This is nothing. And people stop her all the time, and they're telling her all of their business all the time. And and he said it like it happens all the time, but he said it like he knows. He's seen it. And that's a legacy. It's a legacy for the person who sees enough and feels comfortable enough that they could share some innermost things and ask for advice, certainly cry, but it's also a legacy that my son has witnessed total strangers share their innermost with me and seen how I then responded. And so the legacy is so multi-layered there, and I just can't even, I love, what God has done and what he has given me in the way of, because everybody has words. Some of us have more words than others. I love words.
Yes,
and words are just there to, you know what I mean? To give us, to allow us to say what we mean and to express ourselves. And there's so many ways that we can express ourselves. And I love not only the ability to do it, but the desire. I have a desire to say something that will change your current thought process or your current condition. I have such a deep desire to, because words can do that, because they come from a place, from a pure place. And I know God gave it to me. So if I'm giving it to you, it's from him. And so the opportunity to do that, I see things and hear things and these headlines, and I just want to, if I could go into and I have gone into jails. I have been able to go into juvenile detention centers and not other jails, but especially juvenile detention, and talk to young people. But the ability to maybe just by showing up and saying what God has given you to say, which is first in love, period, because that's all we're called to do is love, the greatest thing, that I could change somebody's life, that's living legend stuff right there to me.
Yes,
that's
definitely.
living legend. That's living legend. And that's what it means to me that I have, in my career here in St. Louis, have touched people's lives in a way that has left a legacy. And I'm so just grateful to God. Again, going back to the difficulty and the thought and homelessness and bad relationships and flunking out of school and running out of gas and
So
lights
all of
being
that.
turned off and, all of those things. That, and now I'm here, and now I am here, and again, to God be the glory. And so that's what living legend means. To God be the glory.
All right. To God be the glory. Y'all see that Curl is dropping both jewels on y'all. Make sure y'all listen. But Curl, look, you just talking about, you impacted a lot of people's lives. Who would you say has made the greatest impact on your life?
Oh, there isn't just one, but I will tell you that my father was a drill sergeant, and he's a man from the South. Both my parents, they grew up in the same town in Mississippi. And so men of that era, he's 92. They're not loving on you, telling you I love you. They're out there working and creating a stable family. And so my parents are still married. I want to say it's 65, 67 years now they've been married.
You don't see that no more.
Yeah. You don't see that. And so watching my father, one of my vivid memories is watching my father get his uniform ready. And he would polish his boots. And people know that little case of black polish. He would take a baby diaper, a cloth baby diaper, and polish his boots. And then he would take a lighter and light the polish to melt it. And then he would continue, and the whole house would smell like this polish. And I was just fascinated. And I didn't know it then, but watching someone take that's pride. I didn't know that's what I was looking at, but I later understood it. What I was looking at was pride. Pride in every aspect, and pride in the simple thing. We might think shoes are simple, but it was a part of a uniform that he took great pride in. And so I grew up in a house where my father was proud, and that has an impact. That has a deep impact. And I grew up in a house where my mother was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't realize that she was shy and quiet. I was so loud. I was so outgoing, but it enabled me to my mother wanted me to have every experience, and I had a lot of experiences, and it was because of where we lived, and because we were military, there were a lot of resources available to you. But I remember too, watching my mother when my father was in Vietnam be by herself and raise us, and I did not know, she can say this now, how scary it was to be by herself with 4 kids and then 5, but I didn't know it. I didn't know it. And so my mother was the quiet strength, and my father gave us that sense of pride. And the military itself was a part of the influence, because my father's service in the military, because we all knew that our behavior could impact his career. So we were told by no uncertain terms that you will do well in school, and we had to get jobs at the age of 16. We had to be active in school, and that was my mother's doing. My mother was the disciplinarian, and she was hard on me. I felt harder than everybody else, but then maybe that's because my husband says that's because you needed it, because I was pushing the envelope in all areas. And my mother, my mother said to me once that she was afraid. She was afraid for me because I was so friendly to everybody. I think she thought somebody was going to snatch me up because I was. She said, "Stop smiling. You're smiling at everybody." And I'm like, "Is that a bad thing? I don't know if that's a bad thing. I didn't understand that." So my parents were big influences. When I went to, I also had several teachers who were great influences. The teacher who, Mrs. Hardman, always called on me to read out loud. Everybody didn't want to do that, but I loved reading out loud. And I not anything I wouldn't practice. I would stand up. I was not shy, and I I would read out loud. And her calling on me, I didn't know that then, but it gave me confidence in front of people. I had a fantastic track coach for 4 years in high school, and she was, you knew you could talk to her, and it was great to have teachers. We had great teachers. I always had great teachers. My entire elementary, middle school, and high school. I can't even say that for my sons, but I had fantastic teachers. And my older brothers, when I went to college, I learned, because people told me, oh, I can't, men would say, I can't talk to you. Your brothers told us that, and I was like, what? So that's when I learned that my brothers were texting me from afar. I did not know that. And they are all retired officers, Air Force, Army, Marines, in this order. Army, Marines, Air Force. And I was always so proud of them, and I was proud to have them as my big brothers, because by the time I got to high school, they were athletes, they were good students, teachers loved them and respected them, and by the time I got to high school, I was only known by my last name. So my name carried weight because of my brothers, because they were they were positive influences. And so they were also impactful in my life. And then I married a man that is an answer to every prayer I wrote on a sheet of paper, tucked in a Bible, and prayed over it for a month. And then I met him. And when I asked God for a man who was good with money, God said, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to give you somebody tight with money. And he's going to check you on why you think you need this in the first place. Because you and I both know, daughter, that you are not good with money. So I'm going to give you a man who's going to challenge you to be better with money. And that's exactly what happened. So my husband is he's like both of my parents in that he was also in the Army. I told him, I said, you are the hardest working person that I know after my own father, who was the hardest working man I've ever known. And my husband, Patrick, has been such a great voice, such great advice, such great wisdom to me. I will tell you this quick story. The first day of Great Day St. Louis, I came home. I had recorded it on the VCR, because that's how long ago. And so I came home, and he was watching it, and I could hear me. And I walked into the I walked into the living room, and I looked, and I saw myself. And I thought that I looked terrible. I thought that I looked, mind you, I was a size 12. At my current size, I'm bigger than that. A 12 is a beautiful thing, but I didn't think so at the time. And so I didn't sit down. I went to the dining room, and I sat down, and I just weeping. And I could hear him laughing. I sat in there for like half an hour. It probably wasn't half an hour, like 15, 20 minutes. I could hear him laughing. But I'm still like, I look so bad. What is he laughing at? So he eventually comes into the dining room. And he said, why are you crying? And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. He goes, why? I said, because I look like a cow. I look terrible. And he, without skipping a beat, he said to me, were you in the room when they hired you? Then I instantly stopped crying and then got a little mad. Like, how are you being sarcastic? How are you going to hit me with sarcasm and I am in here emotional? And I said, well, of course I was. Yes, I was in the room. He said, well, then they know what you look like and they hired you. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, and he does not remember this. He said to me, your problem, which I did not like. Wait a minute, what's my problem? Your problem is that you see yourself through your own eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't see yourself the way God sees you.
Facts.
And let me tell you, the funny part about this is that and a lot of women who hear this will understand, I wanted to be mad. So I'm like, how dare you tell me that I'm basically blind? But I knew I couldn't be mad, because that was so wise, and it was a beautiful thing. And I have gone on to use that in so many speeches to people, that we see ourselves with our own eyes, and we are blind,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to see ourselves the way God sees us.
Facts.
And so when he said that, I was like, okay, you're right.
You're right. You're right.
You're right. And I promise you, he said that's a God thing, because I don't remember saying it at all. And I said, well, God was speaking. God was speaking through you in that moment, because it was so true. And there were days, because my co-host, I promise you, was like a size 0, right? Because they do sell a size 0. They used to sell a size 0, like a 2. She was so skinny. She was like a good wind come along, and she'd be blown away. And then I got another co-host, and she was still skinny. And I just remember those days when I would feel like, okay, because that's your looks on another level. You have to pay attention to your lipstick and your nails, and because the camera will come in close on your hands when you're preparing food or whatever, and you have to make sure your hair is, just totally, it's got to be perfect, and your clothes have to look just right, and all of that. Very, man, I'm a girly girl, but all of that was super stressful. And so those days when I would feel that, I would say, okay, God, you brought me here, so you've got to help me. You're the reason I'm here, so I can only do this with your help. And so my husband has always been very straightforward, and very wise. He pulls no punches, and I've always wanted him to look at me and love me. I've always wanted him to. I still, after 20 years of marriage, he walks in a room and I get butterflies, and I when I make dinner, I'm one of them, like the chef, I wipe off the edge of the plate, and I'm arranging, and so I love our marriage, and it's inspiring to me still. And so because of that, someone who wants the best for you and for everybody, I want the best for him too, and so that's very inspiring. And then I have a great church. My pastor, my bishop, G. Vincent Dudley Sr., New Life in Christ Interdenominational Church in O'Fallon, Illinois.
Hey, look, that's correct. That was my next question too. But go ahead.
Yes, that's my church. Yes, and we've been members for 19 years, 20 years. So a very long time. And it's a wonderful, I have found friendship and fellowship, and gone deeper into the Word, and I've had many times I've had my pastor, I've interviewed him for various things, over various issues, breaking news and tragedy, and things that he is doing and that the church is doing, and I'm proud of who we are, and so that's the other inspiration for me, is belonging to a church that has wrapped itself around each of us, and is there for us. And it's a very big church, but we have small groups, and we do a lot of things, and so I love having a church family.
It's interesting, like all the people you name saying like it shaped you, and you have characteristics of each of these people inside of you. So I think that is like fascinating. And like you said, you're a member of the New Life in Christ Interdenominational Church. So I saw that you and your husband launched the couples ministry, Journey to Oneness. Could you tell me about that?
So early on in the vision of the church, our pastor knew that solidifying marriage was a goal and a necessity and a call on the church. And so he came to me and to Patrick to help launch this couples ministry. And I am a talker. I am a transparent person. My husband is a private, introverted individual. And so I remember him saying, "Are you sure he wants me?" And I'm like, "Well, honey, it's a couple. So it can't be just me. It has to be the two of us. So we're going to do this as a couple." And he was like, "Okay." But he stayed with it, and we would facilitate so many classes over the years, and it was such a joy. Our pastor brought together, I want to say it was 5 couples at first, and we didn't really know one another, and we are friends to this day. And it was a great experience for us as couples who were serving in the ministry, but also we pray a good experience for other couples, because I mean, our parents, no doubt, anybody who's 80 and up, maybe even 70 and up, there was no training. You were supposed to get married, but all you knew was what you saw your mother and father do, and you probably saw dysfunction because dysfunction is so common. Right. Divorce is so common. My parents didn't have nobody told them how to be husband and wife or how to be mother and father. Nobody told them how to do that. They just learned by what they saw, and a lot of us didn't see the correct thing. So having actual classes, we take classes for everything.
Facts, yep.
Right? We take cooking classes. There are bartending classes. There are sewing classes. People learn how to do sister locks and go to class, right? But for marriage, we just jump in it. If he know how to kiss, and if she know how to cook, or even if she don't, if she look good, she got a little bit of conversation, boom, you married. But then you don't know. We don't know the traumas that we bring in. Now that is such a focus of everything we do, is understanding trauma. That's a new word in our vocabulary. It's a new area of study, relatively new area of study. But when we started teaching these classes, we started talking about expectations and where they come from. We started talking about selfishness. We taught from a book that talked about what's called the crazy cycle. And so when one person starts arguing, the next person, the wife starts an argument, the husband is like, oh yeah, and then you two of y'all are on a crazy cycle.
Yes.
And what we facilitated, what we tried to instruct was somebody has to remain sane at all times and not get on the crazy cycle, despite your desire to one up, because everybody's got to have the last word. They don't know how to argue, and so number one, you bring in all of your baggage, all of your expectations, and they are highly likely unrealistic expectations into your marriage. I'll never forget one couple, the wife said that she said to her husband, well, that's not the way my father would do it. I said, let's just call my father. We were like, oh, foul. Flag on the play, girl, no. Time out. No, we cannot bring into you are a grown woman, you're married now, leave and cleave. You leave your parents, you cleave onto your husband. So there, just so many things that we were able to uncover, even as we are learning for ourselves about ourselves and trying to be better at how we argue, because you are going to disagree. Definitely. But how do you disagree? And so, and then we learned therapy's okay, because some people have truly, if you were 5 years old and you know that your father cheated because your mother told you, and then he left and you never saw him, you saw him every now and then, there's trauma. Right. And now you have trust issues. And now you have abandonment issues.
Preach.
And now you have become a people pleaser, or you have become distrustful, so you hide everything because you can't really talk about stuff openly, because abandonment says, if I tell her, she'll leave me, so I keep it all secret. Spending, news about the kids, bad stuff with, you keep it all secret because you're afraid to be open, because you feel you were abandoned. And a lot of us were abandoned. We were abandoned, but knowingly or unknowingly. My father was deployed when I turned 18. He had been deployed for 9 years total. So for half of my life, he was not there. And that's back in the day when I never even spoke to him, because there wasn't a cell phone. There wasn't internet.
Yes.
So, and I didn't speak to my father for 9 years of my life. So that's abandonment. There's no way around that. He didn't mean for that. He didn't do that on purpose. That was his job. But a daughter comes up a certain way when her father is not her champion. And so we learned all those things in these couples classes. And our goal was just to, strengthen the individual, and therefore you strengthen the couple. And then the ripple effect, especially because this is a church of mostly Black people, the ripple effect in the Black community is real. It can be real if we solidify the individual, which means all of those things, dealing with the trauma, abandonment, unrealistic expectations, all of that, trust issues, people pleasing. There's a whole host of things, right? Deal with that in the individual. We strengthen the individual, then relationships can succeed. And we have a strong, united front in a husband and a wife. And so that's where the couples ministry came in. And every couple did not make it because, they're for a variety of reasons. But I see some of these women today, and they are okay as individuals. They're walking in their own power and confidence that they didn't have before. And so we still hope, for love and protection in their lives. But as individual women, as women who are single, we need them to, because they're mothers. So we need them to be able to stand strong and powerful for their children and for themselves. So every couple, we saved some marriages and some we did not. But it was such a powerful experience in our lives, and we reflect on a lot of that to this day. I remember we had a conference, a couples conference. It was an overnight weekend conference in downtown St. Louis, and we were up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning putting stuff together, but we were laughing, and it was just such a blessing of an experience. It really, really was.
I say, look, man, I got to say this again. Once again, Curl is dropping jewels. So, yeah, make sure this part right here was real important. So, look, Curl, let me ask you. Okay, one of your favorite biblical verses was whom much is given, much is required. So, can you break down that verse and why is that verse important to you?
So, I will say that people may hear that and think a lot of money, nice house, nice car, good salary, great job. That's the much. We think of that as the much. We think of Oprah has much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Michael Jordan has much.
Mm-hmm.
Tiger Woods has much. We think of it in that way, but that's not the way that I've ever thought of it. That for me, much is just I'm in my right mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? Much is I have love. I do have love in my life. Even before I was married, I had great friends, and my parents, and I had my siblings, and nieces and nephews and cousins, and so I had much in the way of close family. But the person who, I know people who are they have their only children, and their parents are gone, so they don't have siblings, but they still have much, and so I want to start at the most important things that represent the much, to whom much is given. And so what have I been given? I've been given, a life filled with love and opportunity. And so that's the much. In my marriage, we had to fight to, we got counseling. We made a commitment in the midst of difficulty. Okay, we're going to work this out, And so we have a great marriage that was given to us. And so when something's given to you, you either take care of it or you take it for granted. And so we are taking care of it. It's a current day, it's an everyday maintenance plan. And so even though I'm married, I realize that the much that I have been given is something that I have to be mindful of and I have to work for. And I have always believed that. I tell my sons, your life isn't even about you. It is not even for you. It's for other people. Right. You need to live this life for other people, to ensure that other young men who don't have parents like us have a chance, or they know that they have opportunity. They know that they are still important to humanity. And so my gifts, God didn't give me the gift of speech and the gift of wisdom and the gift of encouragement for me to keep it to myself.
Thanks.
There's no way. There's no way that God gave Adele that voice, that God gave Alicia Keys that voice,
Whitney Houston.
She could sing. And Whitney Houston, God rest her soul. Lord have mercy. What a loss. But there's no way that God gave them the voice or the poet, the words, the songwriter. My husband's a landscaper. God has given him a talent. He's a designer. He's a craftsman. So you can see. I look out my front door, my back door. I can see his efforts. So there's no way God gave him those efforts that he could create something and then put a big tarp over it so nobody could see it. Exactly. Right? So everything that is designed, everything that is created, everything that is said is for someone else, right? And so that's what it means to me, that I know I have been given much and I'm required to give it away. Much is required of me. I am required to speak to the mountain for other people. Because some folk got mountains they can't even speak to.
Facts.
Maybe I'm supposed to be the one. I can speak to your mountain.
Yes.
Right? People need to know some stuff they don't know. There are truly women who don't know that they can leave because the abuser has convinced them that nobody will love you. Your family isn't here for you, I'm here for you. That's what cult leaders do. So there are women who believe they cannot leave. So are we not required, because we are in free situations, I'm in a free, loving relationship, am I not required then to say to the woman who is not in a free, situation, baby, you can leave,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Men who are not out here stealing, not out here doing dirt, you are in a free, secure situation. Are you not? And that's much. You've been given much. You've been given a free life, free of prison, free of difficulty. Are you not required to say to the young man who thinks this is the only path for him, you've been given much. We are required to say to the young man who thinks that's the only path, baby, that is not the only path.
That's
and
correct.
so that's the much, and that's the requirement. And it's just, to me, simple that more of us are supposed to be speaking up and doing things, whatever it is in your lane. You know, some people cook, some people, somebody out here directing traffic when I was, when I was leaving, where was I? I was leaving an event and somebody was directing, now your turn. Oh, I was going to the Cardinals game and there was a police officer directing traffic. That was his duty that day. So, whatever it is, that there's a need, there is someone to fill the need. And the reason you can fill the need is because you have been given much. And the much has nothing to do with money, status, none of that. Cars, none of that. It's just the much I've been given much compassion, much desire, much curiosity, and I am then required to do. And it's just really simple.
All right. Once again, Curl dropping them juice. Yeah, I better focus. So, Curl, let me ask you this. On this journey of yours, what has been your greatest challenge?
Oh, wow. It has to be either marriage or parenting. Because, you don't know what child you're going to get. You don't know the personality, the bent, as we say. You don't know the circumstances you're going to be in when your children are born. And in marriage, like I go back to unrealistic expectations and bringing in your baggage. If you don't know, which I don't know that I knew, the baggage, I know that I did not know. And I learned, okay, this behavior is from baggage. You come into it with this fairy tale, I think a lot of us do, and it's not that. And the disappointment is so real. And my marriage was and we are very public about this, that, we thought we weren't going to make it. And I want to say that our youngest was 4 or 5, and he's now 23. And we thought we're not going to make it. And to get through that it's like holding your breath for years, like trying to work it out for years, and knowing you want to. I think I know how. I don't know if I know how. Do I still want to? Yes, I do. Well, then what do I do, and what do I say? And and this is everything. This is the foundation. And to think that, I'm messing this up. I'm not doing and saying the right thing. He's not doing and saying the right thing. And I remember we did, like I said, we did go to therapy. And at one point, I think it was my husband who said that I used to think that if she would just do things my way, and I was thinking, well, if she would just do things my way. And that's just not the way. And so you have to peel back all of these things, and you peel it back, look at it, okay, this is what that is, this is what that represents, and then you figure out, how do I navigate, and how do I understand it? Maybe there's some healing from it, apologies, whatever has to happen to get through that layer. Then you go to the next layer, and you look at that, and this is what this represents that. And, and then heal from it, apologize, do whatever you need to do. And so that's a very challenging one. And the other is, I mean, parenting when nobody's child is perfect.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and then you look around and it's like, wait a minute, you're not going to be the next shock. You're not going to cure cancer. You're not going to be a doctor who finds the cure for the common cold. You're not. I mean, wait a minute. I thought I gave birth to a genius. You're not a genius. Wait a minute. One of our friends, our sons were at the same age, and they were in piano lessons together. Both of our boys and her son and daughter, all four of them were in piano lessons together. And she said to me at one point, she goes, "Well, there goes that dream." We realized they don't have that. We do not have a virtuoso. And that's all funny, but it's for a parent, you want them to be so successful, and you want them to be gifted, and then turns out they're not. Now they do. Everybody has gifts.
Definitely.
You just have to figure out what the gift is.
At that part.
Yes, just have to figure out what it is, and then as we are getting whole, healing ourselves, and we have the eyes to see now who our children are, and then we can help them to be that and give them the resources. And so many parents, you're just unable. When you have trauma, addiction, homelessness, abuse, depression, mental health issues, a parent cannot do that. And so, it's so sad for so many. And we've had children who have, I remember my youngest talking about his challenges in middle school, and we felt that there was a racial component.
I'm still here, though.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
We felt there was a racial component, and those were challenging years. My son said to me that he felt like the teachers liked the white girls the best.
Again, from audio.
Can you still hear me?
Yep, I can still hear you.
Thank you. And then it was the black girls, and then he said they like us the least, meaning he felt the teachers in his school liked the black boys the least. They didn't really like them. And the feeling of powerlessness, momentary feeling of powerlessness, that my son is in an environment that we chose, because we moved where we moved because we thought the district was diverse and good, that my son is now telling me that these teachers do not even like black boys. I wanted to fight somebody. I wanted to cry, and I did not. I didn't fight anybody either, but I wanted to.
He said out there fight anybody either.
Being out there fighting, I wanted to go off on people. I wanted to shout, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I had some meetings. I definitely had some very tense meetings with people. And I had that. My oldest son got suspended, mild-mannered, introverted boy, got suspended because somebody was telling racist jokes on the school bus for 2 weeks, and he had had enough, and he pushed the boy, and the boy fell, and the bus drivers were supposed to go right to a police station if there was a fight, but he kept going. My son got suspended, the boy got suspended. We had a meeting. He was in the 5th grade. And they said, well, this is what happened. And I said, well, why is he suspended? And this boy admits that he was telling racist jokes on the bus. Why is my son suspended? So they cut the suspension down. I knew the parents. We had played sports together. I'd seen them. I still see this woman today. She don't know who. She doesn't act like she don't know me. I don't know. I don't care. But again, the momentary feeling of powerlessness. The powerlessness is I can't control what these other people do. I can't necessarily control teachers, but what I can control is what I say, and how I educate and prepare my husband and I, our sons. And so there were a lot of conversations about, you know who you are, you know who we are, you know you are loved. These people are crazy. This does not change anything about who you are. But that doesn't make it less difficult. I got to send you back to the school. And so that parenting was hard. And having to comfort, correct, and just short of fight people over your children is hard. I wouldn't have seen that coming, although I should have seen it coming. It's going to come in some kind of form, likely racism, because most teachers are, I shouldn't say because, there's just, you're going to suspend kids. My son, my youngest said, Mom, these white girls cry on cue.
Believe
they cry on cue. This is him saying it. Seventh grade rather.
Crazy.
They cry on cue. And he said, when I would tell the teachers that someone was saying something, calling me names or bullying, but that's what that is, the teacher, he said, asked the class, this happened more than once, did anybody see it? She was asking for proof. When the white females would say so-and-so did whatever, my son claimed that the teachers would immediately discipline. They would not ask for proof. They just believed it. And that's the momentary feeling of helplessness that I'm not educating these teachers. I'm not conferring degrees. I'm not in the class on a daily. I can't be there to check them when they need to be checked. So all I can do is strengthen this child and this child, the one that were in my womb. That's all I can do. And then I can, on the occasion, go into the school and say, not today, and this is why, and this is who he is, and this is who I am, and this is why you're wrong, and this is how you should behave going forward. This is why, and that I can do that, and I would do that. So those were very, very difficult times, and I was just praying that that it didn't scar them, that it didn't make them shrink. That was the real concern. Not that I thought it would happen, but I was concerned that it might make them bitter. I didn't want that to happen, because the joy is still real and it's yours. And so they're small, they're small.
Yeah.
Anybody who would behave this way, these educated teachers out here who behave this way, this is what makes me mad about the discussion over critical race theory and the discussion over banning books and not talking about racism. And they put the Rosa Parks documentary back into the Florida elementary school. They took it out. This is what makes me mad about it, is because we have for hundreds of years dealt with racism in education.
Yes.
And now you want to say that it makes you uncomfortable. We have been uncomfortable
yes.
for hundreds of years.
Yes.
And we barely scratched the surface of our real history, because you hid it.
Max, I remember they said they was trying to Look, they was trying to stop they want us to stop making slave moves. I'm like, no, this happened. The people need to see this. Yes.
And we as Black people, I know that we don't like to see them. And somebody said to me one time, have they been done well? We just need to do them well. You know, he said Roots wasn't necessarily done well, but it was all we had.
Exactly.
So I know that we are uncomfortable with our own history because we've been made to be embarrassed by it, and embarrassed by our hair and by our skin and by our big lips. So y'all trying to get these big lips, okay, and big booty, okay. So those times were very, very hard, and I don't think I said to one principal and to a teacher, I can't let you get in between him and a good education. So what do I need to do? Because that's the thing, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get between him and a good education. So if he needs a different teacher, let's put him in a different class. Because if you are in the way, I got to get you out of the way. I have to. And so, I will go to my grave. The one thing I am disappointed in myself is that I did not fight harder to get my oldest into gifted education. I let them tell me, well, you know, he'll get in there, but he might not make it. I let them tell me that, and I didn't come back with, well, let him get in there, and if he doesn't succeed, then, you know, no harm, no foul, but let him have the experience. I didn't fight for it, and I should have fought for it, because that's another thing that far too many do. They do not allow Black students into gifted education with there are all kind of excuses.
Yeah.
And I let those excuses happen. I would like to find that teacher to this day and tell her, you know, one monkey don't stop no show. That's my Black mama moment. You're not going to stop this. Because you can't stop what God had in mind, and his mind is still full with the beauty that is us. I'm trying to get him to pay for dinner is what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I got 3 more questions, girl. So
3 more?
3 more. So,
okay.
So
I won't talk so long. It's on me.
Hey, look, I love it. See, I can tell you in broadcast because you get them in-depth answers. You know what I'm saying? That's why this interview is long. I love it. See, I can tell you. So my question is, okay, after 28 years, why are you finally retiring?
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the question?
Yep.
I told Bob Costas this, that, you know, you see the gas tank and the needle is on E. Mm-hmm. I'm on E. Mm. I am on E. Now I'm on E for this. I have energy for, I'm going to do other things, but the schedule and doing the news when Trump was president took a lot out of me. Someone called the newsroom and said, I used to trust you. And I had just anchored a newscast, delivering facts, because that's what I do. It's not my opinion. This is exactly what happened. This is exactly what he said. This is exactly what she said. And the woman said to me, I used to trust you. And I said, well, ma'am, I'm grateful for the trust that you had in me for the amount of time that you did. And she said, huh? Because I'm sure she didn't expect.
Exactly.
And I said, but I do want you to know that I have not changed. I am the same person. I'm older, but I am the same person. And she said, well, I used to trust you and I don't anymore. And I said, well, that's too bad. That is too bad, because I have not changed. So you have to ask yourself, what has changed? Because it is not me. I have not changed. I am wiser, if anything else. If nothing else, I'm wiser. So you have to ask yourself, what has changed? Because it isn't me. And she did not answer that, and I thanked her and I hung up. But doing the news with that kind of, that's not even a grip on reality. Like there's nothing in me that has changed. I'm doing the same. I'm doing it better. I'm better. I'm a better reporter. I'm a better news anchor. And so for someone to buy into something about the media was very disheartening. Now let's be clear that there has always been bias in the media, but what some people fail to realize is that the bias was usually against Black people.
Right.
That's the bias that existed. There wasn't a bias against Republicans or Democrats. Most of the bias was against Black people. You look at headlines from the early 1900s. I mean, we really are brand new in doing news that isn't totally anti-Black.
Yes,
it doesn't paint the Black suspect as the automatic criminal. We're really just fresh, and I'm talking about the 70s. I'm talking about the 80s. And really, the 70s we could go back to the 70s and find headlines. Could you even get a job as a Black person in most newsrooms in the 70s? So 80s, I mean, it blows my mind that we act like suddenly the news is biased against Republicans. And you never said a word. You bought it because you bought it. Yeah. Because you believed it. I was in Columbia, Missouri in 1980 as a freshman at the University of Missouri, Columbia, Mizzou. And I remember there being a debate that when media would cover suspects, whatever a crime would occur, they would report the race if the person was Black. If the person was white, they wouldn't report the race.
That's correct.
So they would just say a suspect was caught stealing at a supermarket. Or they would say a Black suspect was caught stealing. So it was either suspect or Black suspect.
That's crazy.
So I'm talking 1980. Reports were still being done in a prejudicial fashion against generally Black men. There was no uproar, no outcry from Republicans or Democrats. It wasn't even a political issue, a massive political issue. And so to now be indignant, like be talking about the media as if it's out to get conservatives is laughable to me.
Yes.
It's laughable. It's disingenuous. It's short-sighted. It's ignorant. It's un-American, and we've been un-American for a very, very, very long time. We've been un-American for a very long time. I don't buy your brand of patriotism. I never have. Growing up as the daughter of a drill sergeant, I never bought this brand of patriotism that says Republicans are more patriotic than Democrats. I've never bought that. I have never bought that. And so it's just that time was just really draining. And I will say that at the same time, my mother is diagnosed with dementia, and my father becomes her caregiver, and we watch as his health, because we knew this could happen if he did not get help, and he eventually did get some help, but it was very late. He said to me, "This is my wife, and I'm gonna care for her until the good Lord calls me home." And so we were trying to convince him that caregiving kills if you don't get help as a caregiver. And so we watched my mother. She then had a stroke, and she had breast cancer, and then she had a stroke, and this is all in the space of 5 years. And so and then a pandemic happens, and we move our sons home, one anxiety and depression, and so it was I was juggling a great deal, And meanwhile, the industry is changing as I look. It's just changing, and people are changing. Humanity, Americans are changing, and this greater anger. And I mean, we've always been angry. We've always been mad about something.
Yes,
you know, we've always been scared about something. We've always wanted guns. We've always, you know, been anti this and pro this, and that's always been the case, right? There's always been a battle, north and south. There's always been a battle, rural and urban. There's always been a battle in this country. We've never, ever, 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 ever been settled. Nope. And let me say this publicly: there are no good old days. Yeah,
when I hear "Make America Great Again," I was like, when was it great?
When was it great?
When was it great?
I'm yelling now. Okay, when I hear people say, I miss the good old days. Good old days for who?
Exactly.
What good old day you talking about? So it's always been unsettled, right? And just watching my parents and our sons and my own health. I had skin cancer in 2021. Crazy black woman skin cancer. And then in 2022, I had thyroid cancer. You might see my little scar there. It's going away. I had thyroid cancer. 44,000 people, only 44,000 people a year are diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Only 44,000. And all of those things combined, it just made me think, I'm going to make a move while I can. I am going to go take care of my mother and my father while I can. I'm going to teach. I am going to speak. I'm going to write more while I can. And thank God, you know, because going back to what I said about marriage and God giving me what I asked for and then some, that my husband made me a saver. I was not a saver. He made me a saver. And so we have our retirement is secure, and I'm just grateful that I can make this decision, and that I am going back to living legend. And people watching, my phone may die. I have to tell you this.
Okay.
We've been talking so long.
I know.
But you know what? Wait.
Okay.
My son said, "Mom, put a charger in your car." Boom.
Don't worry, we got two more questions. Don't worry, we got.
Look, I listened to the youth shall lead them. I listened to my son, and I bought the charger.
And look,
2 days ago, I bought a new charger.
See, there you go. So see, it was meant for us. See,
it was meant for us to. Yes. So going back to then living legend and legacy, you know, being conscientious, I have built a career that in favor, you know, God has given me favor, and so I can make this move, and the opportunity presented itself, and I decided to walk through the door. And while my husband he's like, you know, we still have a mortgage, right? I'm like, we'll be fine. We will be fine. You know, I was able to say to him, and I'm able to say this confidently, that there is no doubt in my body about making this move. I just turned 61, and I have these plans that I can do some things for another year or so, and then fully retire. So grateful just is a word. It's a feeling. It's an attitude. It's a spirit. But it is a word, and I wish I had a deeper, greater word to express. I almost have a disbelief that I was able, after all of those things I went through, to be here now and to be able to do what I'm doing. You know, I would say to even my own children, you know, and they are further ahead of the game than I was at their age, I should say, because they have us. My parents they didn't know anything about college. They didn't know, you know, they didn't talk to us about marriage. They just did hardworking people. And so we've been able to be more intentional and
Somebody trying to stop us again. They done called you again.
and so going through all of that, I got to a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. I said to a friend, you know, I felt like after the thyroid surgery, after the cancer surgery, it took so much out of me. And I realized, she said, she works at Siteman Cancer Center, and she said, that's a traumatic experience. And I'm like having nightmares, and I'm crying all the time. And if I talk more about it, I'll cry again. But, and she said, do you have to allow yourself, you know, to feel what you're feeling, because it's real. And I had this bandage, and I just kept thinking, man, my throat's been slashed. You know, I just kept having that feeling like they cut my throat. And so she said, it's trauma, and it's okay, and you'll get through it. And so I said to her, I feel like I just can't do all this anymore. You know, I just can't work this hard anymore. And she said, Carol, it's okay to realize it's not that you can't, but you just may not want to. You just may not want to do it anymore. And that's okay to feel that. And that's the first time that I put myself, I was thinking, it's the cancer, it's the hard work, it's the hours, it's all of these other things. But then that's what she said is taking some control and saying, I just don't want to do it. And you know what? I don't have to. I can do other things. I absolutely, because of Living Legend, the favor, the good works, I can do other things. I absolutely can. And so my tank did get to empty. It really did. But it's filling up again, because I am able to do other things, because my husband has been who he has been in my life, and our marriage is where it is, and our sons are fine. And my parents, we moved them here during the pandemic. They were 2 hours away, and we were having to drive and go see them. And yeah, so.
You see, Carol, I said, you see, broadcasting is in you. You was like, I'm going to give a short answer, but you can't give short answers.
I tried. Oh, my God, I tried. Lord, I tried. All right, Ash, you got two more?
Yep, two more.
Okay.
Two more. So.
Okay, I'm promise you. Go ahead.
Nah, no promise. Do you?
I gotta go.
Do you? All right. What advice would you give to any African-American male or female who wants to get into the broadcasting?
Number one, start reading. Start reading. Read a newspaper, read articles, go get a magazine. I don't care if it's about basketball or architecture. I don't care what it's about, but start reading. You stop listening. You're listening to music, you're listening to podcasts, you're listening to people complain, whatever. Stop listening and start reading. I need you to read, and read some more. And then read a little bit out loud. Because if you want to be in broadcasting, I need the delivery to be confident, okay?
Yes.
To be sure. And I need you to be able to pronounce words, okay? And, you know, if you didn't get both of our sons had speech therapy when they were in elementary school. And I know my sister-in-law, the retired teacher, said a lot of parents don't want that because the program, the forms that have to be filled out are the same forms as if they're going into special education. And parents think, you're not putting my child in special education, and it's speech therapy. And so I can hear people, adults today, I can tell you did not get speech therapy, and you could have. I don't know whether it wasn't, maybe it wasn't offered, Maybe the mom dad didn't want to do it, whatever the case may be, but reading out loud will help you, will help. So read more, read out loud, and develop your curiosity about everything. Why is that happening? Why did they say that? Who is behind that? In news, we like to start with the who, what, when, where, how, and why. Who, what, when, where, how, why. Okay? We like to ask a lot of why. Why is she talking that way? Then we don't get past why. Why he treat me that way? And we got to get beyond the why. We're big at why, but there's a how, and there's a who, there's a what. All of those things start your curiosity gene, your curiosity juices. You know, why is the highway where it is? Who decided to put the highway there? What happened as a result of that highway being built where it was built? We now know the answers to those questions. They blew up black neighborhoods to put highways in. Okay? That's curiosity. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Get your curiosity gene going. Okay? I would also suggest, if you want to be in broadcasting, that you start watching. Watch the news. Listen to talk radio. There's black talk radio out there. You can get it on your phone now. It's not, there's some in St. Louis. It's on the AM dial, but you can get it on Facebook. You can get it on your phone. Listen to talk, okay? I think those are some good basics. If you want to do, for instance, television reporting, you're most likely going to need a college degree. It doesn't have to be from Mizzou. Just find a school that has a radio station. Make sure if you are in college now and your mom and dad listening to this, they should have an internship the summer before their senior year. The summer before their senior year. There are more paid internships than ever before. Maybe it's not enough money. You want to get to New York, or, you know, there's only so many internships that are out there, but there are plenty in St. Louis, and there's non-traditional internships, and you can create an internship. But I always tell people in broadcasting in college, you should come out of college with a resume tape. I mean, digital. It'll be digital.
Yes.
You should come out of college with experience. You definitely should come out of college with experience. Why are you not using your TikTok to create your own newscast?
Thanks.
You know, stop dancing on TikTok. If you want to be a broadcaster, start talking. Interview your neighbors. Interview your mom. Interview your teachers. Interview your little sister.
Interview Carol Daniel.
Well, you can. Sharon Stevens said that Sharon Stevens is a retired education reporter from the NBC affiliate here in St. Louis, KSTK. And she said they had a newspaper when she was in elementary school, and she was a reporter for the elementary school newspaper. And if there isn't a newspaper, you can create one. You can create a TikTok newspaper. I mean, you can do it. It doesn't have newspapers. A lot of them aren't print anymore anyway. So there's a lot of things that these kids can do today that we did not have the ability to do. So please read books, magazines, read articles, and start journaling, because I want you to be able to write your thoughts. And I also, and this is for not just broadcasters, but anybody, heal what needs to be healed. So you are strong enough and solid enough to go after whatever it is you want, and let no mental health, no trauma, no depression, no anxiety stop you from getting what you want to get in life. So if you need therapy, there is free counseling out there. It's available. If you are afraid to go out in public, if you are quick to anger, you ready to fight all the time, therapy and counseling is for you.
Okay. So before I ask this last question, do you have anything you want to promote or anything you got coming up?
I don't have the details yet, but my son and I are going to create a dinner conversation series. He is a chef and an actor. He is going to cook, and it will be a ticketed event. There will be limited, like under 40 people per dinner. And so that's going to happen in June. It's either 3 or 4 in the dinner series. And so if you don't follow me on Facebook, that's where you'll find the information when we do begin to promote it in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Okay. So that's coming up. I am going to write another book, but I still have to find an illustrator. And that's it. That's it. I'm going to retire, so I'm going to be out here chilling.
Okay. So my last question that I love to ask all my guests: when it is all said and done and you are long gone from this earth, what is it that you want the people to know about Carol Danny?
Wow. I want them to know that I was a loving, engaged mother, that I adored my sons, and I was grateful to have them. I want them to know that my marriage meant everything to me, and that my husband gave me butterflies. I want them to know, I would want them to think of me and remember how helpful I was, how encouraging I was, and how much I made them laugh.
Yeah. But there we have it, Carol. Look, I want to thank you. Just a lot of the stuff you said today, it just shows me I'm on the right path. Like I told you, I'm a film writer and director. I do music, and the past year, God just has been opening doors for me, and people come to me for advice and everything. So this whole interview just lets me know, like, you was reminding me of everything you were saying. So it just let me know I'm on the right path, and I love your spirit. I love your spirit, and I just love everything about you. So I am blessed to even, do this, to be in your presence. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And great questions. A wonderful conversation. I'm grateful to have had it. And you made me think. And every question was an important one that everybody listening should answer. Everybody should answer those questions. Who was most influential and all of that. You really, really, I think that a good question is everything.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate this. I will definitely let you know when we drop this article. It should be quick in the interview. And you have a great, wonderful day.
You too. You take care.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.